Hello, welcome to the mission briefing for 4AI. This is one of the four missions that you might be playing at the end of the Grayskull campaign, and it is the top table round 4 mission if the Imperials have the most points going into round 4. What's going on here is obviously Grayskull is under attack by a pretty large Imperial force here. They've made a precision hyperspace jump into the heart of Grayskull cluster, and they're directly assaulting Grayskull base. Meanwhile, the rebels are performing an emergency evacuation, and they've scrambled fighters to protect the transports on their way out of Grayskull base. So, as the Imperials, you're trying to either destroy Grayskull base itself before all the transports are out, or you're trying to shoot down these transports as they leave Grayskull itself. All right, so the first and most important terrain piece is Grayskull itself. Now I've downloaded the Heroes of the Atari Cluster extension to use for this, and I've just got a few different components out here representing Grayskull base. This measures about two and a half range in one axis and about 3.5 range in the other axis. If you want to use something else to represent this, either at home or if you don't want to download the Atari Cluster extension for some reason, you can use those large container tokens to approximate this. After you put Grayskull base itself down, and actually Grayskull base we'll talk about later, but you also want to have a little stat sheet like this for Grayskull to keep track of how much hull and shields and energy it has during the game. After Grayskull itself goes down, we want to put 5 Senator's Shuttle tokens out with 6 hull and 2 shields. And just place them on top of Grayskull base for now. They're going to be flying out of the hangar and trying to escape as the Imperials are trying to destroy them. After all that is down, we start with the asteroids. We have 10 asteroids to put on the field. I've already put them out here. They should be beyond range 1 of the table edges, beyond range 1 of Grayskull base itself, and beyond range 2 of each other. And the rebels start placing those, and they alternate between the teams. The rebel team can then, after all these asteroids are down, the rebels can place 6 activated weapons emplacement tokens. So these are defenses around Grayskull that immediately activate when the Imperials arrive, and they will start automatically firing at the Imperial forces once the battle starts here. So these are static defenses for Grayskull, and I've represented these just with critical hit tokens that I've been placing near asteroids. It's more convenient to place them near asteroids than on them in Vassal, because if you place them on the asteroid, and then you click on the asteroid, demonstrated here very quickly. Oh, it's all going wrong here. Vassal tends to slow down a little bit once you have a little too much stuff going on it. But anyway, you get the idea. If you click on the asteroid, it covers up the token. So it's better just to place the token next to the asteroid where that won't be a problem. So I recommend you do that. All right. So after those weapons emplacement tokens are down, we go into the Imperial team. Now each Imperial player has 140 points to spend on their squad. And in addition to that, the top scoring Imperial player also deploys a Raider class Corvette, which is equipped with a preset loadout of a single turbo laser and a gunnery team on the fore section, and on the aft, a single turbo laser, quad laser, fleet officer, intelligence agent, and optimized generators. And if the Imperials have not lost Agent Halden during Mission 3C, the intelligence agent is then replaced with Agent Halden, who is a custom card which you can find in the Shuttle Tidarium Holodrive Assault on Grayskull base customs card section. probably where you're finding all the rules for this mission. Alright, so the Imperial players have to deploy their forces within range 1 to 4 of these opposite table edges. The top scoring player puts the raider down first to select their edge of the board, and then the other Imperial player has to start at the other edge of the short edge of the board. And all the ships, including the Corvette, have to go within range 1 to 4. So they can't be, peeking out beyond range 4. They have to be completely within range 1 to 4. Alright, so let's talk about the Rebel Team. Rebel Team, the two Rebel players each get 130 points to spend on their squads. And both of them have to deploy at range 1 to 2 of Grayskull base. Now, unlike the Imperial players, they don't have to split their deployment like this. They could actually both deploy on one side if they want to. But that may or may not be a good idea. Depends on your strategy as the Rebel players. Alright, let's move into the special rules. Okay, first special rule is the evacuation of Grayskull. And this is basically just describing the placement of these shuttles as they are trying to escape Grayskull and how they work. Alright, so at the end of the end phase of each round, the Rebel team can take one shuttle token off of Grayskull and place it so that it is touching the hangar, which I am defining as this component on HotAC. If you're using other components, try and just define a similarly sized space. You don't have to be super exact, but try to be as close as you can. We were using a physical model in the original Grayskull campaign that we ran, so we didn't have that particular problem. But this is an appropriate space. Alright, so at the end of the end phase of each round, the rebels put one shuttle token from this pile and they essentially deploy it touching the hangar section. And as the rebels, you probably want to orient it towards a table edge because they're trying to flee off of table edges. Shuttles themselves count as rebel ships. They have an agility value of 2, hull value of 6, and they get 2 shield tokens to start. At the start of the activation phase, so essentially at pilot skill pre-0, they execute 1 speed or 2 speed straight or bank maneuvers. So they can do 2 banks, 2 straights, 1 banks, 1 straights. And whenever they end a maneuver with any part of the base outside the play area, like so, they are considered evacuated, and you remove it from play, and you place it in a pile that you'd be designating for the rebel players. And the rebel players would essentially score points for saving that shuttle at that point. Now, the other outcome for a shuttle is, of course, that it meets a grisly fate at the hand of ruthless Imperials and is destroyed, in which case it just goes to the Imperial pile instead. So the Imperials will have a little kill counter for center shuttles of their own. So that's how the center shuttles work. Now, it's important to note that there's only 5 on this base, and these represent all the personnel evacuating Grayskull base. And we'll talk about it later, but while there are still shuttle tokens on Grayskull base, it still operates as a functioning ship. But after all the shuttles have evacuated, it is essentially a terrain piece and doesn't function as a ship anymore because everyone is gone. If the Imperials want to score points for destroying Grayskull, they have to do it before the last Senator shuttle, for the last evacuation shuttle, is gone. Otherwise, that's most of the. I think that's pretty much it for the rules for the shuttles. Just one more little one is that if they suffer critical damage, you count that as one damage. So they don't get like double damage or special damage for critical hits, unlike a normal ship. Right, which leads us into the next special rule, which I already alluded to. It's called Everyone's Out, and that reads when there are no shuttle tokens remaining in the pile near the stat sheet for Grayskull Base. So this pile of shuttles, when all the shuttles are deployed, Grayskull Base may not perform any actions or attacks. And Imperial players at that point, after that point, will score no points for destroying Grayskull Base. They can still destroy it. They can still, destroy the hull and shields as though it were a normal ship, but destroying it will not give them any points at that point. All right, let's go to the next special rule, which is defining how Grayskull Base itself works. All right, let's go into those. So, Grayskull Base is a mobile, huge ship controlled by the top scoring Rebel player. So, all the normal rules that you might apply for huge ships, except for ones that involve its movement, would apply here. So, for example, if you have a ship that executes a move that overlaps the station itself, it wouldn't fly over like we have here. It would stop at the edge of the base like that and would not complete its maneuver. So you do want to be careful when you are flying in and around Grayskull Base, because you might end up trapped and in a bad position here. So be careful that you don't get yourself in one of these nooks and crannies with a ship that can't escape out of it. Like, I think this TIE fighter is going to make it out on a straight 5, right? Let's see. Yeah, I think he would. But be careful that you don't get yourself in a bad position there and end up losing a ship like that, because it treats everything like a for all reasons, for all intents and purposes, this is a mobile huge ship. Okay, going to the stats, Grayskull gains 4 energy at the start of every activation phase. Grayskull has a hull value of 15, shield value of 8. When it would be assigned a face-up damage card, it gets 2 face-down damage cards instead, so crits are double damage. It acts at Pilot Skill Step 5, and it can perform 1 action per turn. It can do Target Lock, Reinforce, Coordinate, or Recover. And it has a single Turbo Laser, 1 Ion Cannon Battery, and 1 Quad Laser Cannon, which can fire from any direction. So it doesn't have any special firing arcs or any stuff like that. Any of its weapons can fire from any point. You measure range from any point of the station for those weapons. Grayskull also has a few upgrades, which are Sensor Team, Weapons Engineer, Comms Booster, and Automated Protocols. Don't forget about those if you're the Rebel player controlling Grayskull Base, because those are pretty important for getting the most out of your base. Remember that the Imperial players not only have a 20-point squad point advantage on you, they also have a Imperial Raider, which is no slouch itself, and is probably going to be giving you a bad time if you are forgetting about all of the capabilities of Grayskull Base itself. Alright, last up is the weapons emplacements. We talked about them briefly at the beginning, but we should talk about them, about how they're defined as the rules pertain. So, weapons emplacements count as obstacles, using the same rules as asteroids. So, these tokens would normally be going on top of the asteroids and turn the entire asteroid into a weapons emplacement. So, when you're measuring range to or from the weapons emplacement, you use the base of the asteroid to measure that range, not the token. That's just to signify that it's a activated weapons emplacement. All right. So they're obstacles. They use the same rules as asteroids. They can be attacked and target locked as though they were rebel ships. In addition to that, they suffer the effect of bombs and mines as though they were rebel ships. So you can, for example, lay a cluster mine on top of this weapons emplacement and it would detonate as if it was a rebel ship. If weapons emplacements can only be assigned two types of tokens. Target locks, so you can target lock one of these, of course, and they can also be assigned ion tokens. If they're assigned an ion token, the next time that they would attack, they simply remove that ion token instead of attacking. So they essentially miss one attack phase. And of course, they can't be assigned any other tokens besides those two. Weapons emplacements fire at the nearest enemy ship at pilot skill 12. So they're going to fire, they're, firing pretty early in the firing order here. But they do keep in mind that they automatically target the nearest enemy ship. So they aren't smart. You're not controlling them as a rebel player. They're sort of automatically targeting enemy ships that are close by. Now, when they fire, it's treated as a primary weapon attack with an attack value of 3 and firing outside of the primary firing arc. So sort of like a primary weapon turret with no firing arc is how you should be treating this. So if you have an Imperial ship at range 1, you'd be rolling 4 dice against it. If it had auto thrusters would trigger. And likewise, if you were firing at something at range 3, then it would gain a bonus defense die against your attack. When you're attacking a weapons emplacement, you get the range 1 bonus, just like normal. And the other thing about these is that they always roll 2 defense dice when they are attacked. No matter what the range is, no matter what game effects you're applying to these, it's always 2 defense dice. The weapons emplacement, when they suffer damage of any type, so regular or critical hit, you just assign it 1 damage token. So I've got these over here. You just put one of these nearby. And when it has more than 3 damage tokens, you will remove the activated weapons emplacement token, this guy here, from play. So you would take this off the board. And then it's just a normal asteroid again, and cannot attack you. And that is pretty much it for those weapons emplacements. One last thing. If you are overlapping a weapons emplacement, obviously the ship that is overlapping the weapons emplacement asteroid cannot fire because the weapons emplacement uses the same rules as asteroids in terms of you landing on it, so ships normally can't fire when they're on asteroids, so they can't. This ship would be ineligible to fire regardless, but the weapons emplacement is also ineligible to fire at this ship at the same time. So, ship can't shoot the weapon can't shoot the ship. Weapon could shoot other ships, though. And I think that is actually it for the weapons emplacements. Okay, let's go into the end of the game. The end of the game is when one player has no ships remaining in the play area. Grayskull base does count as a ship for this purpose, even if it's evacuated, I suppose. You can destroy it as the Imperial player, even if all the other rebels have gotten off the board. You should still blow up Grayskull base. Leave nothing behind. So that works just the same as any other mission would. Okay, let's move into scoring. If the Raider class corvette is destroyed or leaves the play area at any point, even past the 3rd activation phase, the Rebel players score 80 points each. If Grayskull base is destroyed before all shuttles have deployed, the Imperial players the Imperial players score 60 points each. So that is quite a few points that they'd be scoring. for each shuttle token in the play area, in their play area at the end of the game, the Rebel and Imperial players score 20 points. So for Rebels, for every shuttle you evacuate, you score 20 points. Imperials, every shuttle you destroy, you score 20 points. Players also score points equal to the score of all enemy ships destroyed, with the exception of the Raider class corvette. Players lose points equal to the squad point cost of all friendly ships destroyed. So, the Imperial players, if you destroy an X-Wing, then each player actually scores the cost of that X-Wing. So if this rookie pilot here was destroyed, each Imperial player would gain 21 points. Likewise, each Rebel player would lose 21 points. And the same goes for Imperial ships, of course. At the end of this mission, each player's contribution to the team's score is doubled for the mission because it's the top table finale mission. So not your individual score doesn't get doubled, but your team score does get doubled. And lastly, the same ship fleeing rules that would normally apply here. So ships that flee the battle don't count as destroyed automatically. Only if they flee in the first or second activation phase do they count for points to the enemy. The enemy player will score points equal to the cost of the enemy ship that flees the battle before the third activation phase of the mission. And that would be both Rebel players, so you really don't want to do that in this case. That would look really bad. So, if, for example, this Academy pilot flew off the table, each Rebel player gets 12 points. You don't want to do that. That's a pretty bad idea. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about what you should be thinking about for the strategy behind this mission. As the Imperial players, your deployments are going to... it's going to be a little tricky because you have to take into account the weapons emplacements that have gone down. The weapons emplacements go down on the table before you place your ships, so you can sort of react to those. The real downside for you is that you're deploying at two ends of the table. One upshot to this is that Rebel players will have a hard time completely fending. It's impossible pretty much for them to completely fend you off before you can get a chance to really pummel Grayskull base itself. The downside is that they might decide to do something like this and really punish one of you while the other one has a relatively easy time of it attacking Grayskull. So like the Rebel players could really be nasty. They could put all of the weapons emplacements on one side, all of the fighters on one side, and just try and really hammer you on this side, while the other side is essentially free to make a run on Grayskull. The downside to that, of course, is that Grayskull would be extremely vulnerable at that time, and the likelihood that the Imperials would be able to destroy it and score 60 points plus 20 points for any shuttles still on it. 20 points each for every shuttle still on it. The likelihood that they'd be able to do that is quite good, because Grayskull can't really withstand that kind of firepower. The kind of firepower that 140 points of Imperials can dish out over the course of 2 or 3 rounds. Grayskull will go down. So, that's something for you to think about as the Imperial player. Be ready for those possibilities. For the Rebel player, opposite for you. Think about how you want to divide your forces. Whether you want to give each side equal consideration and try and essentially run interference for the shuttles and run interference for the base. consider whether or not you want to go after the raider with a lot of forces, because it does give you quite a few points. You score 160 points between the two of you for taking down this raider. That's quite a lot. Uh, then again, maybe you want to do everything you can to keep those shuttles alive, and that in that case, it's probably better to concentrate on the fighters, which can get closer. And you would want to keep Grayskull alive to ensure that all the shuttles have a chance to make a run for the table edge. One thing that you may want to try to do is really punish the Imperials as they try to engage these transports, which are trying to make it off the table edge. Remember that you can score quite a few points by destroying enemy ships, especially since the point gains and losses are shared by both players. They're essentially amplified by two because two different players are getting affected by the loss of the destruction of one ship. So, uh, you know, it goes for the Imperial player too. Don't get tunnel vision trying to destroy these transports. Don't be losing two or three of your fighters per shuttle that you destroy, because that's not actually a good trade for you at the end of the day. Keep in mind how many ships you're losing compared to how many ships the rebel is losing, uh, and don't be on the losing side of that equation. Alright, I think that's just about it for Mission 4AI. Good luck.